Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Mark Eades. I'm calling to you from my home office. It's been a few extra weeks now that we've all been learning and working from home. And I've been getting a couple of questions from faculty, staff, students about different things that have been coming up for them while they're learning remotely. One of the things that I've been asked a lot about is the idea of unhelpful thought patterns and noticing that it seems like some students are getting caught up in thinking about things in a way that isn't necessarily helpful. So, what I want to do today is just to spend some time talking about negative thought patterns to discuss like what that is, how it can be unhelpful, and certainly what you all can do in terms of how to break out of negative thought patterns and some tools that are here on the counseling website and other places that can help you do that. So it's really important to remember that negative thought patterns really are, in their essence, a reaction to stress. When stress levels are high, like, right now, all of us learning remotely and having a wrench thrown in our plans with COVID 19, stress levels are going to be a little bit higher. When stress gets high, people react to it. And there isn't like one necessary way that everybody reacts to stress. It can look very, very different depending on who you are, but there are some pretty common reactions to stress. So some people hyper focus on the problem. They cut out all distractions. They just want to look at the thing in front of them and figure it out. And then once they feel better about the problem, they'll let other people back into their life, kind of thing. Other people just withdraw completely. You might not see them for a little bit of time because they're busy working on the problem, maybe internally or in some other way, but they don't want to do it with other people, so they withdraw from other people. Others like to overload themselves with things to do. You might be one of these people or know somebody who, when a big test or exam is coming up, they're cleaning every bit of laundry they have, they're cooking meals, they're going through and scrubbing every inch of their apartment, doing everything that they can, maybe except for studying for that exam that's coming up. It's a common reaction to stress to want to do something, even if it's not the thing that's right in front of you. Some people love to talk to others about what they're feeling or experiencing. That can be very relieving to do that in times of stress. Others just want to experience their sadness, irritability, anger. They want to feel it, not necessarily talk about it with others, but feeling it can be something that's a common reaction. Now, the one that we're going to talk about specifically today is about overthinking or over preparing for potentially negative situations in the future. So it can be common for a lot of people that when stress is high to start thinking about, okay, what could possibly go wrong in my future, and how can I get myself to a situation to stop those potentially negative things from happening. So this is how negative thought patterns tend to look or how they tend to work. A negative thought pattern, in essence, is a person attempting to prevent bad things from happening, even if those bad things are unrealistic and unlikely to take place. So it doesn't really matter if something is going to happen in the future. It might feel real to a person. And so they feel compelled to maybe think about 5, 10, 20, 50 different things that they could potentially do to avoid that negative thing that may come up in their future, but probably won't. Now, when you start thinking about the future this way, it's easy to spend a lot of time thinking about tons and tons of solutions, even for things that probably won't happen. It takes a lot of your energy away. I've heard from lots of students that they feel really drained at the end of the day, not because they've been necessarily doing a lot, but they've been thinking a lot throughout the whole day. It takes focus away from other things you might want to do. It's really common to have a negative or pessimistic view of the future. If you think about that, you're always preparing for what might go wrong, then you're always looking for what might go wrong. And so the tendency is to always be on the lookout for things that are not right. And so you're going to find those things if you look hard enough. And so on the opposite side of that, if you're always looking for things that are going wrong, you can really easily skip over things that are going really well for you in the current moment. So there might be some really great people or things happening for you, but if you're always looking for what might be going wrong, you might just skip right over top of those terrific things that are happening right now. So I like to make these sorts of things really concrete, and I love examples. So I want to talk about two different ways of how a student might approach studying for a test, one that's going to be a little bit more helpful and one that's really not. So, first one, if a student is thinking to themselves, if I study a few hours a day, I should be ready for my exam. So, this way of thinking about studying for an exam is uh, pretty concrete and helpful for a few different reasons. So, first and foremost, it's clear and concise outline for when and how I'm going to study so that I can feel prepared. My goal here is that I want to feel prepared. So, I'm going to study a few hours a day, and that's how I'm going to work towards achieving that clear goal that I set for myself. It's a very realistic goal. I can study a couple hours a day. I have that space in my schedule. Doing that a few days, I should feel more prepared. So all of this kind of lines up that yes, studying a couple hours a day should lead to feeling more prepared. And that's really the goal for myself that I'm setting in terms of moving forward. And so when I have a realistic goal with clear and concise steps to get there, it's going to leave space for other things that I can do outside of studying, like being with friends, exercising, eating, sleeping, all the other things I need to do to feel at my best. And I can still take steps to feel prepared for this exam when the time comes. So lots of things about that method of thinking about studying could be really helpful leading up to that exam day. Now, another way you could think about this would be if I don't study enough, I'm going to fail my exam. So, just reading that, you might think, boy, that feels like a pretty pessimistic way of looking at it. And it is pretty pessimistic. And another part is that failing the exam, that feels like a really heavy burden. You're not talking about feeling prepared or being in your best spot to take the exam. You're talking about failing it. And that just feels like it's a pretty heavy weight to carry. The other thing, too, is that there's no real clear goal or method to achieve this goal. If I'm talking about not failing an exam, well, that's not really me working towards something that I want. I'm not sure how I avoid failing something. There are lots of different things I can do to feel prepared, to gather study materials. Those are all things that I could do to prepare for the exam, but I'm not sure what I can do to avoid failing. It feels like that's not really a clear goal. And so I don't really know what I can do to achieve it. It's definitely more about avoiding rather than doing something. I'm trying to avoid failing, but that doesn't really spell out what I'm going to work towards achieving. So again, not really a clear method about what I'm going to do here. And so without a clear goal, it's hard to know if I'm doing enough to avoid failing. So with this kind of mindset, you might think, okay, I'm going to study a couple hours a day, but is that enough to avoid failing the exam? I'm not sure because I don't know what it would take to avoid failing the exam. And so you're sort of stuck in that mindset of sort of uneasiness. I'm not sure if I'm doing enough. And so that's not really a great mindset to be working towards being prepared for an exam. So you can sort of feel there's two different ways of approaching this. Um, and they're very different in terms of how they're going to sit with a person and how they might affect you in terms of how you're going to approach preparing for this test. So on the left side, where you've got a clear goal, you've got steps that you're going to take to achieve it. It's realistic. It leaves space for other things that you want to do in your life. That's very much a way to plan out what you want to do. That's more about the planning side of it. Now, the other side, where it's more of um, trying to avoid something negative, but I'm not really sure what that's going to look like. And so it kind of leaves you in an uneasy state. That's where we're talking about the problematic thinking patterns like overthinking, catastrophizing, cognitive distortions, all kinds of different unhelpful thinking patterns that can come up. But that sort of falls into that category. So you can get a feel there about what those two sides might look like and how one might be a little more helpful than the other. So a couple of those common negative thought patterns, I spoke about a few of them on the last slide, but to spell them out, here's what they can look like. A cognitive distortion, it's in that top left-hand corner, the red box. If I ask a question, everyone in this room is going to think that I'm an idiot. So if you've got that sort of mindset, it sort of paints a picture that everybody is going to think this very negative thing about me, when realistically, I highly doubt that every human being in a room is going to think the same thing about you, even if a question may not be what everyone's expecting. But to have that sort of cognitive distortion where it feels like everyone will think that I'm an idiot, well, it's going to make it pretty hard for me to ask that question, even if I really want to. So moving to the right, that green box, catastrophizing. It might be a thought like, if I fail this test, I'm going to be a failure for the rest of my life. Well, you can see how, number one, that test sure carries a lot of consequence with it. Because if I fail that, that's going to make me a failure the rest of my life moving forward. So it puts a lot of pressure to make sure that I do well on this test. And it's also probably not true. I imagine even if this student happened to fail the test in front of them, I highly doubt that that will make them a failure in every aspect of the rest of their life, even if it might feel like that in the moment. We're going to the bottom left now, the blue box with ruminating. A thought like, I'm really embarrassed that I said that thing to my friend a month ago. That thing I said was really embarrassing. I wish I never said that. And I could keep on thinking about that embarrassing thing for as long as I want, but it's really not going to do anything. All it's going to do is remind me that I said that thing and I feel embarrassed about it. So finding yourself getting stuck almost like in a mental, like a roller coaster kind of thing. I'm just keep on going and keep visiting the same thing over and over again. Well, it's not really helpful to keep going over it, especially if you're not arriving at any solution. So finding a way to pull your mind out of that is going to be really helpful. And then the overthinking side of it, like, I'm not sure who I might run into at this party I'm going to go to, so I should think through every person I might run into and exactly what I'm going to say to them. So you can feel that that could be a lot of mental preparation that you put into just walking into a party and saying hello. If you're thinking through every single human being that you could potentially run into and everything that you want to say to every individual on that list, that's a ton of effort you're putting into something that probably isn't going to happen. You'd probably be better served to save your energy and use it for something else rather than preparing for this thing that probably isn't going to happen. So the next question is then, if you find yourself in one of those thinking patterns that isn't helping you, what can you do? Well, there are some practical, concrete steps that you can take to get your mind out of those unhelpful thinking patterns and to start thinking about things that can be helpful for you. So, first and foremost, taking some time to step back and challenge those thoughts. So when you start thinking about, here I am thinking about this thing that happened a few weeks ago and I can't get my mind off of it. I'm ruminating on it, or I'm thinking that everyone's going to think I'm an idiot if I ask this question, to say, hold on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely is it that everyone in this room is going to think that I'm an idiot? Or if I did ask that question and people did think I was an idiot, would I be able to handle it if they thought that way? Would I be able to move past that? Or what kind of evidence is there that if I ask that question, that everyone in this room would think the way that I believe they will think? Taking some time to really question yourself and the thought that's on your mind might shed a little bit of light onto whether it's reality, or if it's maybe you thinking about something and inflating it or distorting it in some way that's not actually what's happening. And if you want to, you can also go to the Counseling Services webpage, and there are going to be a few sheets there that are about challenging cognitive distortions or working through mental anxiety. Go ahead and download those worksheets, and you can literally walk through a few different questions or walk yourself through some thoughts you might be having, and then to come up with some other things that you could think instead of those thoughts that could be a little bit more helpful. So if that could be helpful for you, download those worksheets and use them to help challenge those unhelpful thought patterns that might be happening. The other thing that can be helpful too is to look at both sides of the coin. So if you're thinking that you're going to approach something and you're going to have it happen in a perfect way, well, that's just never going to happen. There is no such thing as perfection. So if you're trying to get something perfect, you're always going to let yourself down. That's always going to be the default because perfection doesn't happen. So if you expect that I'm going to approach something, or I'm going to take a test or go into some sort of situation and something about it's not going to go right, because that's how it always happens. Nothing always goes right 100% of the time. Then you can start asking yourself, okay, what went well about this thing that I did or this test that I took? What didn't go quite as planned? And what do I want to do different next time? To expect that things are going to go well, things are not going to go well. So I may as well think about them and come up with a plan for how I'm going to approach it. Should I do something like this in the future? To take some of the pressure off of trying to get it perfect can feel really good to some people. So give yourself that permission and expect that it's not going to go 100% as planned ever. The last thing too is that if everything else fails, go back to focusing on the basics. Ask yourself, am I sleeping enough, eating enough, exercising the way I want to, spending time with family and friends, getting enough calories into your body and getting enough rest for your brain and your body? Those can go such a long way in being able to manage troubling thoughts. So if you can do one thing, go back to taking care of yourself and see if that doesn't help your troubling thought patterns in a very big way. That's what I always encourage people to focus on whenever they bring this to me when we're working in counseling. There are also a couple things that you might want to download to your smartphone or to visit on the Counseling Services webpage. One of my favorite apps that I use all the time is called Stop, Breathe, Think. It's a way to, it's a free app that you can download on your smartphone, and it walks you through guided meditations, guided imagery sessions to get you to just slow down and to really think about what's going on around you, to regulate your breathing. Just take a few minutes out of your day to sort of get grounded and then to keep moving on with your life. It's a really helpful tool. I use it a few times a day, especially in those weeks or moments that I feel like, boy, I just feel really tense. I could use just a couple minutes to just let some of that tenseness go and to reapproach my day in more of a calm mindset. So it's something you can download for free and just bring with you anywhere that you are. The other thing, which is pretty cool, that Elon has just gotten access to offer to all Elon students, is called WellTrack. So WellTrack is a free app that you can download to your phone. You can sign up for free if you've got an active Elon email. And it walks you through ways that you could track your mood, things that you're doing that might be affecting your mood, both in a positive and not so positive way. And there's also different sections where you can learn how to meditate. You can learn a little bit about problematic thinking patterns and things that you might be able to do to address those thinking patterns. It's sort of an all-inclusive app that you can use to figure out what you're doing that's helping you from a mental health standpoint and some things that are working against you. So go ahead and download that and check it out. It's for free. You may as well give it a try to see if it's helpful for you. And then another thing I want to show you all is on the Counseling Services webpage. If you go on the left-hand side, this thing that says COVID-19 and your mental health, there are going to be lots of different resources that myself and the rest of the counseling staff are putting together to help you think through some different things that might be sitting with you. So whether it's problematic thinking patterns, whether it's how to connect with other people in a remote environment, basics for getting better sleep, there are all sorts of topics here, and we keep adding to it every day and every week. So keep checking out the Counseling Services webpage under this tab, COVID-19 and your mental health, and you might find some topics and some tips that are going to be really helpful for you during this time where we're going to be physically distant. So thank you all very much for taking the time to learn a little bit about troublesome thinking patterns. If y'all have any other thoughts about what might be helpful in terms of things that you might be sitting with, give Counseling Services an email, give us a call, and we're happy to hear about things that you might want to be learning about. So let us know if there's something sitting on your mind. But until next time, thank you all for taking the time to listen, and hope you're staying safe and taking care of yourselves. See you, everybody.